No one's going to be held accountable. It's just something to keep us busy for a while. Welcome to the Boom Clap podcast, where culture and conviction collide. I'm your host, Rita Rogers. Today, we're going to talk about the Epstein Files. It's something on almost everybody's mind, and also almost everyone is talking about it. But in typical Boom Clap fashion, we're not going to cover this in the typical way. It's also something that I want to say, whenever there's issues like this that are big, people are talking about them heavily, and there's sharp divides on either side, and not always a lot of people thinking about what they're saying or actually looking at the information. I come on with a little bit of anxiety, not because I'm unsure about what I want to say. I know exactly what I want to say. I know exactly how I feel about this. I know exactly what I want to communicate, but I'm coming on just talking to you, and sometimes I forget things that I really want to say to you, or I might say things in a way that doesn't fully embody what I want to convey. And so there's a little bit of anxiety surrounding that. So just know that anyone speaking right now that really cares about the truth probably has a similar issue coming on talking about it, because they want to be clear and they know it's a heavy topic. So just like I do right now. And so I don't know, give me a little grace, and just give me a little grace as I go into this episode with you. Also, we're going to talk about the World Liberty Forum. It's something that you probably haven't heard about. It's something flying under the radar. As we are flooded, like the scene is flooded with information about the Epstein Files. Everybody's been talking about that and kind of the Super Bowl, the halftime show, all of that all week. And meanwhile, there's these other things going on behind the scenes. And in that way, the World Liberty Forum does tie in with the Epstein Files. We're going to talk about those two things today. Before we get into it, please go back and listen to last week's episode if you missed it. Rachel Reeves from Here Are the Headlines was on. It was we talked about current events, so it was as fun as it could be talking about current events, and I thought it was pretty fun. So anyway, go back and listen to that episode if you missed it. Also, those of you who have been supporting the podcast on a monthly basis or a one-time basis, something I brush over and I don't really talk about much, but I do really appreciate. I thank you guys all so much who do contribute. It really helps me out. It helps me keep this podcast going. There is a link in the show notes if you're interested in contributing in some way. I would appreciate that. But always, as always, not necessary. You can just listen here. That's totally fine. Sharing these episodes is a huge help as well. I really appreciate that. Appreciate you guys supporting the sponsors. Rocasa is a great sponsor that I love. I'm wearing their sweatshirt today. Rocasa Organics. You can go there and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your order. Supporting our sponsors is amazing. I appreciate the sponsors here. And they are companies that I actually use. I only have a handful of people that I go back to consistently sharing with you as sponsors, because they are companies with products that I actually use and trust. And that's what I'm going to promote to you here. Only things I use and trust with my own family. And the last thing I will say, please leave reviews. Again, I just said share the episodes, but that's really appreciated as well. Leave reviews wherever you listen. If it's YouTube, you can leave comments. If it is Spotify, you can leave a 5-star. If it's Apple, you can leave a written review. I really appreciate those. And those of you going there to Apple, leaving written reviews, thank you so much. All right, let's jump in to the Epstein Files. All right, I've been personally asked by many of you if I'm going to be talking about this. And yes, to that I said, yes, I will be talking about this. And then there's another separate set of you that are messaging me online, not really yelling, but kind of ranting at me about how you think I will cover the Epstein Files, like already upset at me, and I haven't really said a word. So I'm just going to say, if you are here today hoping to hear me say anything, like throw that out the window. I'm going to say what I believe to be true, as always. But if you're hoping to hear me say with certainty that Donald Trump is innocent, you're not going to be happy. If you are here hoping to hear me say with certainty that Donald Trump is a pedophile, you're not going to be happy. And I guess I should say also on this line, now that we're already starting to get into it, if you're listening with kids today, I think it should go without saying, talking about the Epstein Files, like maybe review this episode first. But review this episode before you listen with your kids. But Anyway, if you're here hoping to hear me say anything, you're probably not going to be happy. I think we all need to take a pause and just ask, what is it we really want from this situation? And accountability. Do we want the truth, or do we want our version of the truth? Do we want the people that speak up to be the kind that just tickle our ears and tell us what we want to hear on either side? Or do we want the people speaking up to be the kind that are willing to say, I don't know, because we're unwilling to knowingly speak a lie, again, on either side of the issue? If you're using this as an opportunity to just sling mud and say, I told you so about a politician that you already dislike, I don't care who it is, in my opinion, that is disrespectful to the actual victims of Jeffrey Epstein and those in his ring that helped him and the people who participated in the abuse. The American people at large, and really the world, are secondary victims in this situation. Yes, we are victims of the elite class in some capacity, but when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, we need to keep the firsthand victims front of mind. If your personal feelings about Donald Trump are the biggest factor or a factor at all into whether you think he is innocent or guilty, you need to check yourself. Because, and you can apply this to any politician or any celebrity that's potentially involved here. It does not matter how we feel about them. That's not what makes them innocent or guilty in this situation. What matters is what was actually done and whatever the truth is. And if you're passionate about any, like even this issue or any issue, if you are passionate and it is a political issue, a governmental issue, or an issue that involves seeking accountability through our justice system, and you have not called your United States representative, your United States senator, or potentially your governor, but you're online badgering or asking an influencer, a commentator, a blogger, a mom to comment, and you have not called the people that are actually elected to hold people accountable, what are you doing? Like, ask yourself, why are you going online to hear somebody else say something you want to hear before calling people who are actually in a position to hold these people accountable? It's misplaced expectation and misplaced anger. The truth is what we should be seeking, period, here. Like, we need to be seeking truth along with accountability. And so, as always, I'm going to do my best to be as truthful and honest as possible as I go through what we're going to talk about today. And I will say, I will not have the time that this warrants to put into researching through 3.5 million files. Like, I'm just not going to have that kind of time. I've already spent hours actually going through the files, but it's just not enough. It's enough to see, yes, it is grotesque. It is evil. It is disgusting, but I will not have the time to devote to cracking this case, I guess, like, yeah, I'm just not going to have that kind of time. But okay, so that's just the ground rules, I guess. That's the best way to put it. That's the ground rules going into this. This is our mindset we should have going into something this serious. So we're going to talk a little bit about people involved, specifically Donald Trump, because I know that's a lot of people listening to this podcast are conservative or libertarian. So we're most interested in the person we voted in office. So we're going to get to him. But before we do that, we're going to talk about some basics about the files, because in asking online, I don't think many of you have yet went to the Department of Justice page, that searchable page where the files are. And not that you have to, but if you haven't, you don't really understand what is there. So what are the files? A lot of people, I think, have the impression that this is 3.5 million individual pages of nefarious emails going back and forth between Epstein and his clients. But that's not what it is. I mean, there's some of that there, but it is a lot of political back and forth. It's a lot of articles written about politicians, a lot of invitations to places. it's not, it's basically like a police file. It's like a police investigation. So you're getting 3.5 million gathered pages of information that could be everything from an invitation for Jeffrey Epstein to go to an awards event, to an article written about Jeffrey Epstein by somebody else who was investigating him, to an article written about Donald Trump and Russia, or Obama and, I don't know, whoever. It's not all just Jeffrey Epstein did this other person did that. In fact, it's probably a small percentage of what you find there. And that said, not everyone mentioned, like not every searchable name you're going to find was actually directly involved. And let me give you an example of this. I was looking at somebody's post the other day about the Epstein Files, and then just reading through the comments, seeing what people were saying. And somebody had mentioned, yeah, but you're not talking about any of the right-leaning Hollywood actors involved. And they named off like 5 or 6 people, Rob Schneider. I can't even think of, I can't think of all of them. Adam Sandler is one of them, though. And so I was like, well, actually, I have seen people posting about Adam Sandler being involved. He's not really being overlooked. But I was like, let me type in his name and see what I find. And so I typed Adam Sandler into the DOJ search of the Epstein Files, and 55 pages populated. Almost a third of the 55 pages. I went through every single one. And almost a third of the 55 pages that populated were an invitation for Jeffrey Epstein to attend an awards event. And within this invitation, it listed who was going to be recognized at the awards event. And there were like 10 celebrities that were going to be honored. I think it listed Adam Sandler. Mary J. Blige was one of the last names on the list. I don't even know who else was listed, but his name was within the email as an honoree of this award ceremony that Jeffrey Epstein was being invited to. And again, this was a third of the 55 pages. Some of the other emails were emails about other things, but quoted Adam Sandler movies. And so maybe he is involved. I don't know. But if he is, it's not directly obvious. There wasn't a directly obvious email. And, maybe it's coded. I know people are saying like the word pizza. That's been floated out there for a very long time. This is not news to any of us who have been paying attention. But I didn't see that word in the emails either. So anyway, my point is, when you hear somebody is named in the Epstein Files, they may or may not be involved. They might have just been somebody who is investigating Epstein. Like, obviously, Adam Sandler wasn't investigating Epstein, but it's just an example. It's something, when I saw that online, I'm like, this is something I can look up and kind of see where people are coming from. Another thing to note is the search feature is particularly horrible. For example, I can search Bill Gates, but I cannot search Bill Gates virus, which there are emails including all 3 of those words. Cannot search Bill Gates Mary or Bill Gates STD. Emails, again, including all of those words within the same email or text, but I cannot search that. So it makes it hard to find things, because if you want to find something specific about Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein or their communications, you actually have to sift through thousands of entries. So if you haven't went to the DOJ website yourself, you don't have to, but I'm just going to say, if you're not going to go there yourself to investigate what's within the files, I don't want to say you're better off not listening at all, but you need to be very careful what you're listening to, because I'm finding all sides almost to be incredibly misleading and short-sighted, and just brushing over things that they want to brush over and highlighting the things they want to highlight and leaving off details that are convenient to the narrative that they want to promote. And pay attention to the awful, evil nature of all of this stuff. But when it comes to specific individuals that are being highlighted, I would just say investigate a little bit yourself. One person that is doing a more broad job, House and Habit. I don't agree with everything she posts or everything she promotes, but she's been involved in this in a very long time. And she's somebody that, I'm still looking with caution if I watch what she's pushing out there. But Yeah. I don't know, she's also said a lot of things lately that I'm like, well, yeah, I've been saying that for a long time. The short clips are awful. The fact that nobody wants to just say, I don't know, or people want to act like they know everything about 3.5 million files when it just came out the other day is insane. So anyway, she's somebody that would maybe be good to look at if you're wanting to get a balanced picture of what's going on, or actually like closer to the truth while still looking at it cautiously and judiciously. So another thing to note is these files have already been sifted through. It is heavily redacted. There's one page that I screenshot. It's literally like a few words and the whole thing is blacked out. So it's heavily redacted. And you need to also remember that we were promised these files over a year ago. And now we're getting them. So ask yourself, why now? Why are we suddenly getting these files? So my thoughts on the files, my first thought was, is anybody regretful about being mad at me for calling the release of the binders almost a year ago today a big joke when it happened? Because I went online, I was just really frustrated with it. And then I was kind of frustrated with myself at the time about how frustrated I was. But Pam Bondi, if you remember, did the TV tour literally a day before the binders were handed out, saying the files are on my desk, and was just acting like she knew what was in them, and then handed these white binders out to influencers that waved them around. And so Pam Bondi apparently said this without looking at what she had on her desk. And then the influencers, who were supposedly the new media that we were supposed to trust more than the old media, went around waving these binders, again, without looking at what was in them. And it turned out to be all previously known and previously released information, which I found incredibly frustrating. But the real scandal to me is just the fact that there are files in the first place. The fact that there has to be more than one page of this information come into the hands of a politician or somebody in a position to hold people accountable, let alone 3.5 million pages before. And still not before anyone's held accountable, still nobody is being held accountable. And that tells us a lot about what we need to know about America right now and the state of our union. Which brings about another interesting point. Several years ago, I think it's Whitney Webb, went on a handful of podcasts, including the Glenn Beck Show, and was discussing Epstein as involved in blackmail and an agent of Mossad and involved with our CIA. And there's interestingly not a whole lot of discussion about that online, and possibly even people distancing themselves from that narrative. So that's a little bit interesting also. But back to the fact that there are people supposed to be representing us just sitting on these files and these pages of filth without doing anything about it. The elite are a protected class. Like, we've known that. This is nothing new to anybody who listens to this podcast, but it's never been more obvious. And like everything else, this is the thing that I haven't heard discussed, that you're going to hear discussed here. And it's just, this is the part that really frustrates me. Like everything else, these Epstein files keep the common man overwhelmed and busy while the elites keep building and making moves behind the scenes and building their success. And it is so frustrating. And let me give you an example. I think about this all the time with the tax code. Like, our tax code in America is so incredibly overwhelming that the average business owner, me and my husband, we have to go to someone to do our taxes and spend days and days. And really, like, every purchase you make goes into, you have to code it a certain way so that we know if it's a business purchase or this or that, and crunch numbers and figure out like how much we have to pay in taxes and how can we, spend this year on business versus next year to help, shield yourself from a little bit of taxes. And it's like this incredibly complicated system that we have to spend so much time on. Meanwhile, the elite is out there hiring somebody to do this for him or her, creating themselves a charity to funnel money through, or defer taxes until the next year and then indefinitely, ultimately, by reinvesting them into their money into their business. And then we are like trying to build our wealth to have something to pass on to our children just to die and have to pay inheritance tax on something that we already own, but the government now thinks that they have part in. And the elite are just like skating by, getting by, not paying anything, while the middle class is continuing to just try to scrape by. The Epstein Files remind me of that a little bit. And I know this may seem like a stretch to you, but it's just like that busyness, like we're held in this busyness of trying to figure everything out. And it's made unnecessarily complicated, but necessary to the elite to keep us busy. And so the files remind me of that in the sense that everybody's celebrating that it's in the public eye. And yeah, that's great. But I'm frustrated at the release from the standpoint that to me, it is signaling it's your turn. It's your turn to sift through 3.5 million pages and figure out who's actually at fault within them, who should actually be held accountable, all while trying to raise kids, go to work, serve in our communities, do all the things. And also just over here, please figure out who's at fault within the Epstein Files and who should be held accountable. But just note, this is just busy work for you for a little bit. We're not actually going to do anything about it. And we are already paying people massive tax dollars. We're paying a government and government employees to do this for us. Like we're already paying people that are supposed to be holding people accountable and ensuring justice. But yet these files are handed to the American people for what? Like to figure out who's guilty and who should be held accountable? Like I understand it's good for us to see what's actually happening. I mean, it's good potentially that these were released, but there's another part of me that thinks it's not good because these being released just, I feel like is a flag to everyone that no one's going to be held accountable. It's just something to keep us busy for a while. And I don't know. I digress there, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. I hope that was clear. That is an incredible frustration to me with these files. And call me jaded, but we're supposed to learn from history, right? And so historically, the American federal government has a recent history, at least, of zero accountability to the elites outside of political games. Like if you're playing a political game, they might hold somebody accountable. But outside of that, no. And so I hope to be proven wrong on this, but I'm not holding my breath. I do not expect accountability. I see this very much as another instance that probably will turn into us being kept busy for a couple weeks, a couple months, something to talk about while they do other things behind the scenes. And we continue to pay people to do the job of holding people accountable, and they just don't do it. If you're on the hunt for the best non-toxic products to use in your home and on your family, look no further than Row Casa Organics. They have products for your household, for body care, sleep, teas, hormone products, wellness products, allergies, skincare, you name it. It's a one-stop shop that is non-toxic and you can trust. You can use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your first order. Row Casa is on a mission to provide clean, non-toxic, high-quality, and completely natural, effective products. They're constantly pursuing the best ingredients found in nature, along with working alongside organic chemists and third-party testers to ensure maximum potency, efficacy, and quality with every ingredient in every product. If you haven't tried Row Casa yet, go to rowcasaorganics.com and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your first order. Also, politically, we kind of talked about this a little bit already, but politically, each side's attempting to use this to their advantage and blame or focus on only the people on the opposite side. And like I said earlier, some of you guys have asked me specifically about Donald Trump because you voted for him. And it's been somewhat predictable to watch, but we're going to talk about him for just a second here. I've listened to a lot of commentary actually about people's concerns or release of concerns about Donald Trump. And I listened to Alex Jones. That was one of them the other day. He went on the Benny Johnson show, which that in and of itself is interesting to me because Benny Johnson to me is kind of just a status quo, normie, if you will, conservative. But Anyway, I'm going to play what Alex Jones had to say for you, and then we can discuss it a little bit.
With Epstein saying here, I was like, wait, this is great. Exactly. He should lean into this, and he should just absolutely demand even more be released. And he should be doing press conferences right now saying, look, I told you it's not me, it's them. They asked for it. Here it is. And so that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're starting to see that from the president. Not only victory laps, but also lawsuits. He's planning on suing Trevor Noah, Michael Wolff, maybe others who lied about him inside of the Epstein Files.
Years ago with Epstein saying, Epstein's like, no, he never had a massage. He was never around the underage girls.
Right.
And Wolf's like, well, how do we get him? He's like, I don't know. And Epstein's like, there's recordings of it. He's like, that bastard, he's the one that put me in jail the first time. It just, we already knew all this. So I'm like, what are you scared of, Trump? But he had advisors saying, sir, it'll destabilize the economy. It'll hit all the, no. Let justice be done. May the heavens fall. And now that Trump gets that, because he didn't know what was in there. He just knew he was innocent. He knew the media was saying and implicated him. So he was right when he said it's a hoax like Russiagate that I'm involved. Then he clarified, no, Epstein's bad. I'm saying that I'm involved in a hoax. So he now needs to double down, have a press conference like he did. South African president said, we're not killing any whites. Then they showed them saying, kill the whites. The president saying, kill the whites. The next party saying it, and they all shut up. He should just have a press conference and say, okay, here's all the evidence. It's all Democrats. It's not me. And then that would explode his popularity, because when we had, the FBI director and deputy director 10 months ago or whatever saying, oh yeah, there's nothing there, that hurt Trump really bad. Mm-hmm. Because I know they were being advised there was nothing there. No, there is something there. And so now Trump needs to lean into this because it exonerates him. This is his greatest victory. They're trying to sell him that it's his greatest defeat. It's like the Emperor's New Clothes. They go, only royalty can see the special gold filament that we weave these with. And because he can't see, he goes, well, I'm royal, I better say I see it. It's the opposite. There's nothing there. And this is actually the same thing.
Okay, so basically he's saying that, he's saying there's nothing there. And to say Trump's not in there is a lie. Trump is in the Epstein Files. He populates, I think 2,000 times when I type his name in. But I think what Alex Jones is saying, he's saying he's not in there, but I think what he's actually saying is there's nothing incriminating in the files on Donald Trump. And we're going to talk about that in a second. The other thing he's saying is that this is another question I've gotten. What did Donald Trump mean when he said it's a hoax? So we're going to talk about that in a second also, because Alex Jones is saying that he meant his involvement with Epstein is a hoax, not the files as a whole are a hoax, which is how I think most of the American public took it, myself included, initially hearing that. And and then he's saying it's Democrats only in there and those kind of things. So I guess most of what I'm finding, so I didn't go through all 2,000 files, or I think there was actually more than that, depending on if you typed in Trump or Donald Trump. As a whole, I think when you type Donald Trump, there's about 2,000. And when you type just Trump, I think maybe 5,000. So that broadens your search quite significantly. But what I'm finding as I scroll through there, and I went through, several pages of files, obviously not the whole 2,000, but most of what I was finding are truly policy related and governmental articles people had written, those kind of things. There was a large section, though, I came through and read through that involved accusations from teen girls, but I believe it was dated, and you guys can go and look for yourself. There was a date at the top, and I'm not sure that's the date the information was collected or the date it was filed or what that date meant, but it was dated August 2025, which I found very interesting. And additionally, there's a portion within that text, and this is a text there's a lot of yellow highlighted information, a portion within that declares the witnesses who were interviewed not credible. You can take that for what you will. That could be something that was added. That could be the entire file have been added recently. That could be true. I don't know. I'm just telling you what's there. and I don't know. I think I can link this in the show notes. I think I can link some of my searches directly in the show notes. So I'll try to do that for you. But to say he's not in there is not true. To say there's nothing incriminating, potentially true, depending on how you're looking at it and how much you believe how things are stated. I will just put it that way. The hoax comment. I'm going to play what Trump said because after hearing Alex Jones say that, I did hear this a little bit differently, and it made me question my listening to it the first time. So
there have been survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill. They're calling for these case files, these documents to be released. And Thomas Massie, who is sponsoring a discharge position to get the House to vote on releasing those documents, says he doesn't believe you're implicated in these files, but many of your friends and donors may be. And he says that's why the Justice Department is redacting them and slow walking the release. Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir?
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. Even if you look at D.C. right now, D.C., it's a totally safe zone. It's called a safe zone. That's a term. It's a term of art. It's a safe zone because it's very safe. You can walk down the street now and nothing's going to happen. No crime, no murders, no nothing. Because we had a lot of problems with certain places, and we still do. All run by Democrats, or for the most part run by Democrats. So what they're trying to do with the Epstein hoax is get people to talk about that instead of speaking about the tremendous success, like ending 7 wars. Sure. I ended 7 wars. Nobody's going to talk about because they're going to talk about the Epstein whatever. Sir, I understand that we were subpoenaed to give files, and I understand we've given thousands of pages of files. And I know that no matter what you do, it's going to keep going. And I think it's enough, because I think we should talk about the greatness of our country and the success that we're having. I think we're probably having, according to what I read, even from 2 people in this room, we're having the most successful 8 months of any president ever. And that's what I want to talk about. That's what we should be talking about, not the Epstein hoax.
Okay, so he does say Epstein hoax, and that's kind of what I was listening to the first several times I heard this in the news back when he put that out. I heard him calling the whole thing a hoax. That's what my mind picked up. And now looking back, I am questioning myself listening to that a little bit, because clearly the reporter did ask about his and his donors' involvement. And he answered by saying, you know, that was a hoax. And I do think he's implying himself there as his own involvement as what the hoax is, especially as he doubled down on his accomplishments as a contrast to the Epstein Files. So, I mean, because he did talk about releasing files also. He talked about in that clip releasing files. So I don't think he could have been calling the whole thing a hoax. So I don't know. I think I misheard that the first couple of times I listened to that. But I don't know. Yeah. And then Alex Jones, back to his clip, was talking about how he was being advised on releasing files, and basically as that being the reason that things weren't released till now. Again, do what you want with that line of thinking. I'm not going to state my opinion on that. I'm just going to leave that as is. But I will say overall, on Trump, again, I'm not going to say for sure either way on him. I'm just going to say the comments he made publicly in the past and the life he obviously openly lived in his younger years, it feels naive to think that he is entirely personally innocent, to what level he could be involved, or whether I'm just going to say, I don't think he is the type of person I would look to in his younger years and say, I want my son to act like that. No, I don't want my son to grow up and act like that. So to think he is innocent, I do believe is somewhat naive. But from what I see in the files that I have overlooked, and again, I didn't read all 2,000 files, I am not finding there what people are saying is there. And so I'm not going to go either way on this. I'm going to be very cautious to say something that I have no evidence to back up. But what I will say, when it comes to any of us, not just those in public office, how we live on a daily basis, no matter our age, is important. And the things that we do, even if they're not illegal, how we portray ourselves and the things that we're willing to promote and say and the way we act can impact us later in life. And I will say that Trump's character in his younger years, and people can change, but his character in his younger years is impacting how people see whether or not he could be innocent or not, myself included. And so I just want to say that as a broad statement, like as we're raising our children, this is a good example of how it's important to note that the way we conduct ourselves gives people an idea of how we will conduct ourselves, right? Another person, Obama, people are talking about Obama, again, a couple thousand times in the files, but what I read through, again, didn't read through all of it, but they're mostly politically related articles. All right, so to wrap up on Epstein, regardless of personal implication within the files, regardless of being involved in certain acts or illegal acts, it seems almost everyone, at least almost everyone in the most upper echelon of politics knew Epstein and knew of him and potentially partied with him at the very least. And that's enough for me to say that I feel like every one of those people carries some responsibility and is somewhat at fault, even if they're not personally implicated, because they knew. And anybody who knew and did nothing or sat on these papers while it continued, or even after it had ended, if it has actually ended, I mean, I'm sure something like this is still going on, right? Is responsible. They carry a responsibility to the victims and to the American people. And I find fault in that alone. I think that is enough to consider yourself at fault. And so I'm just going to leave it at my previously expressed frustrations with the fact that we are paying taxes to a government that doesn't respect us, that is willing to spend our money, that doesn't find it important to seek justice for the least of us, that doesn't find it important to hold people accountable when they're wrong, if they've got the right name or the right dollar signs in their bank account. And that's frustrating to me. And the last thing I will add is, as you're looking at these things, or as I'm looking at these things, I'm not going to put this on you. You can do with this what you will, but I just don't think the CIA is done messing with us. I think that there are still things being planted by the government on either side to get us riled either way, to sway our opinion, to essentially get the public to be the psyop for them. And so anyway, it's really hard to know what to believe. Just remember, like this was all supposed to be released by this administration a year ago, and it wasn't. For whatever reason, if it's because Trump was being advised not to because it would hurt the markets, or because they just didn't want to release it because they weren't done redacting stuff, for whatever reason, it was supposed to be released a year ago. Ghislaine was found guilty in 2021. Epstein was reported dead in 2019. And it's 2026. When it comes to nutrition, there's a lot of talk about meeting your protein needs. And while I leverage whole foods as much as possible, finding Equip Foods and specifically their Prime Protein Powder has been a huge help for my busy lifestyle. And when I say find, I searched and searched specifically for a single ingredient, all beef protein powder. And now you can go to equipfoods.com/Rita15 and use the code Rita15 to save when you try it for yourself. Why beef protein? It is a clean, highly bioavailable source of complete protein containing all 9 essential amino acids, and it has naturally occurring collagen and gelatin for the skin. It doesn't require the heavy processing like whey and plant powders. No chemicals are used in the process, and it won't leave you with a protein powder bloat that you might be familiar with. Prime Protein is the original beef protein powder with over 20 grams of delicious grass-fed beef protein, no junk, no fillers, and is third-party tested for safety. So go to equipfoods.com/Rita15 or click the link in the show notes of this episode and use the code Rita15 to save on your Prime Protein order or any of the Equip Foods products. All right, so you've heard about the WEF, but what about the WLF? The WEF, the World Economic Forum, just wrapped up a few weeks ago, and we love to hate these elitist organizations. But what happens when the president of the United States of America, or his son, probably at his, request, is organizing a new organization, the World Liberty Forum? Let's read a little bit about this. World Liberty Financial announces exclusive forum to discuss the future of finance. World Liberty Financial, the WLFI, has announced it will host World Liberty Forum, a central forum aimed at bringing together leaders across sectors, including capital, technology, and regulation. According to Donald Trump Jr., the event will discuss the future of finance. According to the Trump-backed DeFi project, an invitation-only event will feature leaders from global sectors such as finance and technology. The event will take place at Mar-a-Lago, a private venue, and aims to discuss the future of finance, technology, and regulation. I believe this event is scheduled to take place exactly a week from today, and I think on February 18th. World Liberty Financial to set the stage for future revolutions in the global economy. Donald Trump Jr., one of the co-founders of WLFI, said the event will bring together an unmatched concentration of decision makers at a moment when the global economic order is being reshaped. Sounds interesting. They're reshaping the global economic order for us. He also said that the forum is about defining what the next century of American innovation, leadership, and economic influence will look like as the U.S. gears towards the 250th anniversary on 4th of July. According to a press release, the organization revealed plans for the World Liberty Forum, which will convene large players who collectively manage trillions of dollars in capital, major sporting and entertainment institutions, global media platforms, and critical financial infrastructure. The forum is expected to host 300 guests, including executives from Fortune 500 companies, global investors, senior policymakers, and leading technology leaders. So this isn't going to get a lot of time today, but it's something you really need to be paying attention to. We, like I said, love to hate the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, who used to put that forth. And yet we have Donald Trump Jr. putting together another forum with people that manage trillions of dollars to reshape the economy. Meanwhile, we're all invested in the Epstein Files, which is a big deal, don't get me wrong, but I can't personally do anything about these people who are implicated. And I really probably can't personally do anything about this, but what if people actually knew this was going on? And so I look out across the landscape of people watching politics right now, and I see kind of 3 categories. And the first being those who pay attention to legislation, and then just the issues like Epstein, ICE, trans issues, whatever's making the news, whatever being put in front of us that we're supposed to be watching, what we're allowed to see. And the second type I see are people that see the technocracy unfolding. They're watching digital currency. They're watching the growing gap between the wealthy elites and the average American citizen. And they kind of see the aforementioned topics as a distraction. Like you talk about Epstein, they're like, that's a distraction. And then the third group, which I put myself in, is the group that sees both of these things simultaneously. And I personally feel, being in this camp, I'm incredibly misunderstood often. Like, people in the first group see me as crazy. They're like, what? We just need to be paying attention to these issues that can be voted on and these things that are right in front of us. And then the second group is like, you're ignorant. You need to be paying attention to all of these financial things happening behind the scenes that are going to, like the digital currency and the digital ID, and all of these things are going to eventually capture us and keep us from true, like, not that we have true freedom now, but keep us less free than we are now. And so I don't know. I just, like I said, that topic isn't going to get the time it deserves today, but I think that we need to be paying attention. And it has me thinking about, I don't know, I've just been wondering lately what it would be like if we all focus more locally. Recently, there was a massive secret Chinese biolab uncovered in Las Vegas. And I have no idea how long it had been there, but I wonder how long it took for somebody to notice. And around here, we have solar farms, wind farms, data centers creeping in just an hour away from here. I'm going to use massive amounts of water. We have CO2 being injected like crazy deep into the crust of the earth. And these things are popping up all around us. But yet we're online all day talking about the Epstein Files. Again, important, but not at the expense of ignoring all of these other things. And so I wonder, what would it look like if we looked up and looked around us instead of being on our phones all day learning about only non-local issues? I think that we all are guilty sometimes of thinking we know so much more in this current time because we have access to information. But really, collectively, I feel like we know so much less because everyone in all of America, and sometimes all of the first world, is focusing on the exact same 3 to 5 issues at the same time. And we focus on them for weeks on end, and then we move on almost always with no one held accountable to the issues we were paying attention to. And we pour so much time in to figure it all out and then do nothing about it. All we've done is talk about it and waste a lot of time and energy. And then we repeat this cycle, knowing nothing of what is happening directly around us in our local communities or even states, and also these underlying huge issues because we're kind of distracted from them. And so now we have new NGOs like World Liberty Forum setting up to decide the future of finance and move the economy forward as they see fit. Does that sound like liberty to you? No, it doesn't to me. I mean, it's all exhausting, and I will never say we should shield ourselves from the bigger picture, but I think it's wise we ask what the full court press on a handful of issues keeps us from seeing, and then also consider where we have an impact. Where can we personally make an impact? And even on these bigger issues that do take up most of the media, what is our role in them? How can we personally make an impact? So in our home, we've been using a book that goes through the Psalms. And yesterday we read through Psalm 10 and discussed it. And as we did, we talked about how some of the Psalms feature prayers that are actually against our enemies. And that's such a difficult concept. I'm going to read you just a little bit of Psalm 10 so you can frame your mind around what I'm talking about here. But this is Psalm 10, verse 12 through 15. It says, "Rise up, Lord God, lift up your hand. Do not forget the oppressed. Why has the wicked person despised God? He says to himself, you will not demand account. But you yourself have seen trouble and grief, observing it in order to take the matter into your own hands. The helpless one entrusts himself to you. You are a helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked, evil person until you look for his wickedness, but it cannot be found." And so this is somewhat a prayer of compassion towards an evil person because they're praying, for the wickedness to no longer be found. But if you just read that, break the arm of the wicked, evil person. It's a prayer against your enemies. And so, like I said, it's a difficult concept, and we talk through this and ask the question, should we actually pray that harm come to others so that they can see the evil within themselves and so they can turn away from their ways? And we ended up concluding that as we pray, regardless of how we pray, we must examine whether we're trying to persuade God and, get him to do something that we think is right and just without acknowledging our own sin. Or if we're praying prayers such as this in Psalm 10 with a true understanding that we are powerless. And so we are willingly leaving things up to God that we cannot control. And that's ultimately how we should be praying these prayers. And so as I was mulling over the Epstein Files and people's calls for justice and people's calls for the average mom on Instagram or the commentator who, maybe comments a lot on political issues to not sit back and do nothing, I was thinking about this conversation with my girls and the fact that prayer is a legitimate weapon. And we should reach for it. And as Christians, it should be the first thing we reach for. I've personally been convicted lately that this is something I don't do enough. It's not the first thing I think of always. Sometimes it's the first thing I say. I'm like, I need to pray for that person. But then doing it or doing it in a way that I actually believe what I'm praying for can be done, that is hard. And I'm admitting that is harder. And so I think that's Satan. I'm pretty sure that's Satan trying to keep us doing things on our own and trying to keep us from bridging that gap from ourselves to God and ourselves, to the Holy Spirit and reaching for that and leaning on God. That should be our best and most used weapon. I was thinking also about an analogy, like how people in the military and specifically special forces that will say they have a favorite firearm. And it's just like they know it. This is my favorite firearm. If I'm going to the scenario, this is what I would want to use. For those of us who are Christians, prayer should be that for us. It should be our favorite weapon. It should be the thing that we reach for first. It should be the thing that we rely on most heavily. And so as we proceed with all this information of evil in the world, consider what the world would look like if we tried to pay attention and make an impact closest to home. And if we were focusing there first, if we were focusing all of us on our families and our communities and then our states, focus on home is a worthwhile pursuit. Don't let people make you think it's not. That if you're not focusing on all these things going on in the news, you're not doing your part, and focusing on your home isn't enough. Like it is. But as we do that, just remember prayer isn't nothing, and that the best weapon we have against every evil we see, whether it's local, in our homes, or abroad, is prayer. All right, guys, that wraps up today. Not as short as I wanted it to be, but we got through a lot, and I think I covered it to the best of my ability. So you can send me messages if you have concerns with things I said. As always, please leave a review. Please find me on Instagram at Rita Rogers Co. on Instagram and Boom Clap Podcast on Instagram. You can also find me at ritarogersco.com. Thank you guys so much for listening.